Nvidia is about to get wrecked. You've been lied to about the AI chip war. Everyone is obsessed with who makes the fastest chips, which is Nvidia. But that's the wrong question. The cost of inference is a structural blind spot for Nvidia that Google is now exploiting. And get this, OpenAI, the face of the AI boom, just secretly did something that proves that the game is over. They started leasing Google's TPUs, and more on that in a bit. I'm going to explain it in detail. It's a 4x cost arbitrage that will potentially save them billions. That's the financial earthquake no one is talking about. By the end of this video, you will know exactly why Soros and Warren Buffett are quietly buying Google and why the Nvidia tax is about to expire. So first things first, this tweet right here will probably be known as what marked the end of the Nvidia tax. So here is a retweet or a reply to the fact that Google came up with the TPUs that you can see right here, which showed significant performance improvements to the point that regarding the newest AI model from Google that I actually made a video about yesterday was performing better than all other AI bots before, a new one came out a day later. But you get the point. And this AI was trained exclusively on this new TPU. Well, it's about a year old now. And no GPU was used, which is the important part. And this is the tweet that Nvidia made. We're delighted by Google's success. They've made great advances in AI, and we continue to supply to Google, right? Making it clear, hey, investors, don't sell our stock. Look, we're still supplying them stuff. Nvidia is a generation ahead of the industry. Does this sound like someone who's confident? It's the only platform that runs every AI model and does it everywhere computing is done. Nvidia offers great performance, versatility, fungibility, greater performance, greater versatility and fungibility than ASICs, which is what a TPU is, which are designed for specific AI frameworks or functions. Nothing about this tweet screams confidence, and this is obviously very bearish for any Nvidia investors. This is about where I would start selling if I held all the way up until now, which would have been a miracle already. But I would have probably started at least getting rid of some of these Nvidia shares. The cracks are showing, right? So this is the battle, the GPU versus the TPU for the uninitiated, because you may not be a geek, so you may not know what the difference is exactly. So I'm going to briefly explain to you what the difference is so you know what the urgency is with Nvidia and why they're cracking. So a GPU, which is a graphic processing unit, is like a Swiss Army knife. It's a general purpose thing, right? The purpose, it was originally designed to render complex graphics and video games. And this is, when I learned about Nvidia, I didn't invest because I thought video games, how big is that, right? Boy, was I wrong. Flexibility, it's incredibly flexible. It can do graphics, scientific computing, AI training, AI inference, and at a certain point it was even mining crypto. So it can do many, many different things. It can handle many different types of math problems, right? So that's its edge, right? And that is why Nvidia is riding wave after wave, because it was riding even the crypto wave, and now it's riding the AI wave, and whatever wave comes in the future, it may actually be able to ride that as well. So this is not talking about the end of Nvidia, but the end of the Nvidia tax, and more on that in a bit. An analogy. It's great at everything, but not perfectly optimized for any one thing. Now, the TPU, on the other hand, is a specialist, right? The TPU, the tensor processing unit, is like a specialized screwdriver or a Formula One race car. And that's the cool thing, right? So its only purpose is to speed up AI math, which is matrix multiplication. Now, the cool thing about that is that obviously you can do these fast, but then the drawback is that if future large language models do not use this, then they become useless, right? So that was the big bet Google made. Google essentially thought that matrix multiplication is going to remain the future. There's not going to be any major change here, and thus they invested a lot of money in this, and it's paying off now. Efficiency, because it focuses on only one task, it can do it much faster and use much less power than a GPU. So you get more for less. Analogy, it can't play video games, but it wins the AI race every time it stays on its own dedicated track, right? So people all thinking about the money and trying to save money, right? Why the TPU is disrupting AI, which is the cost factor. Now, there are two areas when it comes to AIs, right? So area number one is the training area, right? So when it comes to training, building the AI model, things like that, you do that one time, right? But it is expensive. And the best thing to use for that is the GPU, right? From Nvidia. So that is where Nvidia has its edge. So it is remaining in the stack, at least for now. Now, inference, running the finished AI model, like asking ChatGPT questions, etc., TPU is much better because there the task is far more simple. And it turns out that this is actually where a lot of the money is, right? So the TPU is over here, and there are several edges when it comes to being over here. And the work is repetitive and simple and just make predictions, right? So valuing the TPU's cost and power efficiency. So it's becoming better, right? It's simply put far more significant when it comes to this. It is likely that Nvidia has lost this part, at least as long as it's matrix multiplications that we're dealing with. Nvidia will probably lose this indefinitely. Now, a lot of people are going to remain quiet. You're not going to hear too much about this from other companies. And this is something I've talked about in other videos. I mean, think about it this way. Many companies have invested in Nvidia GPUs, right? So they've spent, let's say, $1 billion on these, but now they've essentially become obsolete because of the TPU. It's much better to run it on the TPU, but they can't just switch right away because now what are they going to tell their investors? Oh, these GPUs that I paid $1 billion for, they're not worth anything anymore. In fact, I need more money to buy these new TPUs instead. So that's kind of brutal for this guy. You know, it's a tough game, you know, running a business. But the good thing is that at least they have, you know, the training can still be done with the GPU, so they're not without value. And because of the complex nature, multimodal, it's coming in many different inputs. For the time being, it's going to probably remain GPUs, right? So it's not all going to zero, but it's a rough thing. You might have just lost a lot of money. In fact, OpenAI is defecting. Very dramatic, but they're just, you know, trying to reduce costs. It's defecting to Google. OpenAI, Nvidia, most prominent customer and Microsoft's partner, is now leasing Google TPUs for its massive ChatGPT inference workload, signaling a calculated move driven purely by cost. So I think we're going to start seeing more and more over time as they roll over, right? As these TPUs become better and better and better, and it becomes just you know, people, because the GPUs expire, right? The old GPUs, and then they perhaps buy less GPUs. Again, for this part, they won't need GPUs anymore. So for the inference, they'll just use the TPUs, and then the GPUs will be used for that. So essentially, Nvidia is losing potentially half or more, and more of that in a bit, of their business. Not good. So this is his face right now, I think. I think they're probably stressing out like there is no tomorrow. I think they're sitting on the table and trying to find a solution for this, but I don't think there's going to be a solution. This is something that had to be done from, you know, back in the day. And even if they come up with their own ASICs, it's just, you know, hard to beat Google that's been stacking benefits. So the 2.3 billion blunder, right? Training versus inference, the real cost. So the real cost of AI is not training, the upfront build, but inference, the perpetual running cost, because this keeps going, right? Now, OpenAI's projected 2024 inference bill will be 2.4 billion and is 15x its ChatGPT training cost. With that being said, these are all just assumptions. These are rough numbers. We don't know all the details. You know, we'll have to wait until the smoke settles. When stuff like this comes in, you'll hear lots of rumors, lots of numbers. I mean, I'm not an accountant. I didn't go through all this stuff. And even if you go through all their balance sheets and all this, you still have to trust the numbers they give. You're not on the inside, right? So we just have to go with what people say. So a structural blind spot, NVIDIA's expensive architecture used to exploit. So this is going to be very rough. They're definitely losing a huge piece of the business, half if not more. And because even though, yes, inference is perpetual, but you also have to keep training, right? The training doesn't stop, because if your model is not at least amongst the best, you lose. So for now, training is also a big cost, but it's just not looking good, right? And this is how Google does it. So think about the Apple model, right? Apple is able to have these high margins, right? So here's the research and development, manufacturing, which is about the same for everybody, but the margin is the difference, right? So Nvidia used to be able to have these huge margins because there was no real competitor. Nobody was at the cutting edge that they were. And because they've been doing this for so long that they can just ask for huge margin. Nobody comes even close. Whilst Google now with its TPUs doesn't really need all that margin because it's integrated. They own the whole stack. They're doing everything. They host the cloud and they do the software. They do everything associated with these TPUs. So they can simply specialize it and make it such that it is way cheaper than Nvidia. So this is rough. I don't see how Nvidia comes back from this. Nobody wants to see Nvidia lower their margin. So this is overall very bearish, right? This may be a bubble popping event, but we'll have to see what happens in the long run. And yeah, so the 4x cost arbitrage, Google TPUs being ASICs achieve up to 4x better performance per dollar. I mean, this is really hard to overcome, right? For inference than Nvidia's flagship H100 GPUs. This difference scales to potentially billions in annual savings for hyperscalers like Meta and Anthropic. Again, we're dealing with, everything we're talking about right now is just assumptions. We'll have to see how things are in the long run, right? Because oftentimes there's a lot of hype and who knows, maybe Nvidia had something up their sleeve, right? And the funny thing is the institutional investors, they front run all this. Warren Buffett invested in Google not that long ago. And everyone's like, man, this dude is investing at the top. He doesn't know what he's doing. Meanwhile, I mean, I don't know how they do it. Honestly, I'll be shocked if they don't have some sort of insider information. I'm not saying he specifically is doing insider information, but many billionaires invested in Google. Too many people got in, okay? There's rumors, people are talking. I think they got some insider information. I just don't see it any other way. So institutional shock signal. I mean, these guys are not going to play games they can lose. They only play games they win, right? If you hit this level, you have hundreds of billions of dollars. You can pay people a couple $1 million for some information because you're going to make billions on that, right? So, but again, hey, don't sue me. I'm not saying him specific. I'm just saying, the people at that level, I'll be shocked if they don't do, even if it's not targeted insider trading, but you hear so many things, right? You're talking to the boards, you hear all the stuff way before the general public. It's just the nature of being able to talk to board members and stuff, right? So it just happens naturally, I think. I don't think it's possible to actually stop it. Financial giants like Soros Fund Management increased their Alphabet Google stake by 2,300%. I didn't check exactly the number, but all of them got in, right? And even value investing person Berkshire Hathaway or a company took a significant position. The smart money is quietly pricing in a structural shift. It's really funny because even me, I was like, how is Warren Buffett investing in Google? But man, these guys, they got some information we may not have. Oh well. With that being said, what do you think? Do you think that Google is truly going to destroy Nvidia, or do you think Nvidia is going to survive this, or do you think that this is indeed a bubble popping event and that this is the end of Nvidia, the Nvidia tax? Definitely comment down below. With that being said, I want to give a special shout out to the Patreons. Salute, soldier.